بساط صلح گر از عافیت نگردد تنگ کسی ز خانه نیاید به عزم جنگ برون بهار عالم انصاف گر به این رنگ است نرفته است مسلمانی از فرنگ برون جستن از وسوسه شیر و پلنگان هم نیست جستن از وسوسه شیر و پلنگان هم نیست جستن از وسوسه شیر و پلنگان هم نیست مرد باید که ز چنگ غضب آید برون مرد باید که ز چنگ غضب آید برون. Welcome to the next part of the Hazara Pioneers Library, presenting to you A Vizier's Daughter by LILLIAS Hamilton. Chapter 3. My dear young Nosogo, remembering the Bakulo, the current generation, millennial generation, who have very little historic memory. Wherever in the Hazara communities around the world you may be listening to this story, Chapter 3 goes about the gathering clouds. The broad plain below the village tower had turned from a vivid green to a dull brown. This is the scene of the Hazara village. Not a camel was to be seen, and only here and there a few stray donkeys and some goats, which strolled lazily about, cropping off the last green shoots or nibbling at the sticks, which were all that was left of the bushes that in the spring had been covered over with grayish white leaves and blossoms. The sheep and cattle had been driven to the higher regions, from which the snow had now completely melted, and where the grass was still plentiful, for spring had given place to summer, and the sun had been doing its very best for several weeks to reduce the lower plains into an arid wilderness of stones and scrub. Only where the wheat stood ready, gandum barkadat, taistush dali, for the sickle was there, any sign of cultivation, and much of that even had been removed, and the ground prepared for the crop of Indian corn, which a group of laborers was busy planting. It was a hot, cheerless day, misty, oppressive. Is your food not to your taste, father? Gul Begum asked as she went outside and joined him as he sat in the shadow cast by the tower across the court. Zir say minar shta padarshi, Padar Gul Begum. Mayamaga nan khoshtuna mad baba. The food is all right, he said, but this is not a time for much eating. Fetch me some water. Kamabidi? Or no, is there any tea? Make me some tea, Gul Begum. Something is wrong, the girl muttered as she disappeared inside the dwelling. There is something more than thunder in air. It isn't that he is not hungry. He had forgotten to take his food, though he was sitting there in front of it. Gul Begum And as she came out with the tray in her hand, she knew that she had guessed aright, for he was eating. Whatever was the matter, it was not sufficient to spoil his appetite. Bazam Romkhornan. Will you take your food first, or shall I pour you your tea? She asked. The vizier pushed the dishes from which he had been eating from his hands with a sigh. That's enough, he said. Give me the tea. Ah, good girl. I see you have remembered. That's capital. Offering. To be worth anything, tea must be piping hot. Chai dagna bu chai ne diya. Offering doktora. Gulbegum had removed the thick-colored quilt, which in obedience to her father's instructions, she had made and thrown over the tray and its contents. Le China go कोब एक चीज़ जोर बनाना खदीस को बाबिश फरमाइश की देती है वो बरेज़ी एक पर्दा जोर खबर जोर को बरेज़ी 2 cups, I notice, the father went on, smiling. You are cultivating your father's taste for tea. أنا خو شاي خوب كلو جور كده مو فاهمي كده أتيت خوب شاي خوش درا شاي خورا. Pity you are not a boy. هاي كتوبة بچاني بچا. Gulbegum, you ought to have been a boy. Tu boya digo bacha mabudi. You have the size of a man. Saygu qawarara. Misli martikalli. And the strength, quwwati mardana, and endurance of a man. And hausileshra. And yes, I think I may say the wits of a man. Wa muzzakawatu shiari mardram dartu khuda deda. If I have the wits of a man, tell me what is the matter. And why you forgot to eat your dinner? His daughter asked, sitting down beside him coaxingly. What trouble is there in the air? There you show something more than the wits of a man. He said, laughing outright, those are the wits of my dead mother appearing again in you. Mama dar khadar tu mingar na bache mas tu az martikam terit kho tu misli madar az mali. She was a strange woman. Gulbegum and none of us knew rightly where she came from. Khabaram nadre ki as kudam mardum budi as kuja madadi ki mawzu payda shde. She did not know herself. But she was a fine woman. Ya gajib zan bud. The finest woman. Behtarin zani ke maan taano zindagi ho ushkudo. I have never seen in these parts. There was nothing of the Hazara in her. There is not much of the Hazara in you, the girl said boldly. Now, there you are wrong. The vizier replied hurriedly, I am a Hazara to the backbone. But it's my mother's blood in me. Perhaps that gives me a love of adventure. And travel, and makes me hate to see my countrymen mere beasts of burden. Animals with no thought beyond مثل حيوانات की غير از فكري या لغمنان و की चीज बोबशुम nadra. The rock or the mud that gives them shelter, and the next morsel they can get to stuff down their throat. कि वो चीज ताइबिनी के ना वामे दे या सरपना वाशी के सर खुदरुन का ना मुझे खाओ करने के लाज़ है इन्हीं जिंदगी आज़रे मगर चीज जिंदगी The 1880 طرفا. Yeah, no way. It is their kismat, Gul Begum said. What can they do? Kismat is not AMIR kama, jis kar mitana. What? Indeed? Pay taxes to the Amir of Kabul? Forsooth, we who are free as he. Let him pay taxes to us. We do far more for him than ever he does for us. مو چرور خراج بی tax بی. مو ازو کده زیاد کده ازو کده کم نکده. What is this about paying taxes, Father? Who can demand taxes from us, who are free and owe tribute to none? ما انسان هیچ کس بلی سرمون نیه و کسم خراج دینی نی. وزمو چی تقاضا داره خراج میخواه tax میخواه. And that you may well ask, say mogitu, bachim, who devastated the hillsides for miles? خبری کی وہ کوهار گرفته میده کده. Who destroyed half the villages around Jalalabad? Who made the tower of Shinwari's heads? Who does these deeds of blood? تو اسکی پرسان نہیں درو. اینی رقم آدم ہے. Ah, there you're unjust, Father. Nan beinsafi na ko Padarjan. The iron hand that swept these robbers off the face of the earth. Na khud duza bodar ke raftan wa gum kadan rahe zuri zamin. Ye khub gaba ko insaf avorda. Ina tamam razan و نمیدونم آدم کش بودن. Brought peace and safety to thousands of honest traders and herdsmen. There is nothing to regret in the destruction of Shinwaris. We must be just. The wives and mothers and children of those robbers may have suffered. درست از اوستو اسلام مگر اونا خو چرا دیس دوزیز ده. But for all others it was a gain. برای خلق یه خو انصاف شد خوب شد که اونا جمع کردن روی زمین. یه خوب میره دیگه. We must be just, I said. فقط انصاف در نظر بگیر. True enough, درست است. Her father retorted pensively. The world lost nothing in the Shinwaris. درسته که دنیا هیچ چیز کم نشد که چندان شنواری رو زدن. But the man who overthrew Jadu and Dadu can overthrow others too. جادو دادو که است اینا همه شنواری ها بودن به نظرم. ما هیستریش رو باید از هیستوریان پرسان کنیم. داستان ما فکر رو میه که داستان شنواریزه که اگر کسی جادو دادو رو میتونه بخشر بکنه و بیخر کسی کنده میتونه. And he will too if they oppose him. هر کسی که خلاف شیسته شده و رو بخشر کنده و تانوزره. Who is talking of opposing him? ما نمیگم برم خچ جنگ کنی. The girl questioned eagerly, half guessing the truth. I am. ما میگم باید مد جنگ بری. باید خلاف زیسته شنی. Her father said, I refuse to pay him the tribute he has sent to demand. اونا فرش هم ده دزمو خبر رسنده که خراج برسن در کابل. ما اینال تصمیم گرفتنی. گبر موقع اینجی. Why does he suddenly ask tribute of us, Father? What have we done to gain his displeasure? از موچر ناراضم. از موچر خراج میخواه. How have we excited his wrath? موچ طور غضب زورا دعوت دده. What have we done? موچ سکار کده. Just what we have done for hundreds of years. No more, no less, we have lived free among our own hills, untrammeled, now and again carrying off some Afghan girls and cattle. بعض اوقات میتر موشه که یگو مثلا مال یا دختروی او غور کی موبایل نی ده جواب ازی که هو دخترو مال از مور بالگده. یعنی می چیزا موشه for some they have carried off from ours just vengeance. یعنی می یک مسئله انتقام است که بین از مو و افغان است دیگه هیچ قصه نیه. Just vengeance indeed. بله قصه بل انتقامه. Who would do less? هذیگه کسی که باید مال ترچور کنه دکترای تو بالکت ببره تو چیز کرده میشنی قرار no man that's just the point درست گفتی هیچ مرد ایره گوارانه but this iron Amir he would fain be the only man in all the land and bids all other men to be women فقط خود خوری من نرمگه دیگه تمام رمگه اینا ماده he had forbidden feuds and vengeance حالانکه اولا که امده بود ای جنگ قبیلی رو بند کدد انتقام گیری رو بند کدد he is no Muhammadan ای مسلمو ایج نیه he had forgotten the ancient law ای قانون را شریعت را فرموش کده چیزه او شریعت an eye for an eye a tooth for a tooth دندوی تر مایده که دندویش مایده کو چیم ترم بزد چیم شر بزن and he says there is to be peace the man that makes raids upon their neighbors are to be exterminated root and branch کسی که بله همسایه خود در منطقه همسایه اگر حمله کنه و بیخشیر باید کنده شنه and because our neighbors here made a raid down into an Afghan village last week چرا که از مردم از ما رفتد در منطقه اوانه اونجا حمله آور شده بودن and carried off 3 women 3 زن بالگده ورده بود 2 children 2 زوستو 7 cows and some sheep he demands restitution او مگه ایره جواب شد بیدین and promises و وعده منه if we pay taxes اگر ما خراج بیدیم to protect us from his subjects in the future بازو رعایه خمگه که دیگه اون طرفا نرید if we won't pay he won't insist on his subjects discontinuing their raids اگر ندیدین خراج بز ما کار ندارم این کوچه مایا رفته اندازی پیشم منم ما بزینا رامانی ننم بل جانچم رینم and yet he says he will burn our villages and destroy our crops if we make raids on them مگر اگر مو بلی کوچه حمله کردی بس اما دهات شما آتش میزنیم what sort of justice is that دختریم امیر تو انصاف مگی یه جوابی پدری گل بیگم father it would be a good thing if these laws of retaliation were done away with این انتقام جویی ای که ما یک تقدم تو ترمون همزینه چر تیر نمشن شما if we kept our flocks and herds and women and boys and they keep theirs هر کس از خودت مال خور بگیره I never could see the use of these perpetual thefts and pillagings دیگه ای بازی دوزی و چپاول نموشه نه هر کس مال خور خوندیش نه همزه اکشتر دوز بگیره both sides must lose in the long run نقصان از اردو طرفه اردو ده خساره اگر تو شما کار جاری بینین there is no sense in them that's just what your grandmother would have said اجیت بچه من میرکم تو رام گفت اره and it's all true enough راسم مگین شما باور که راست مگین let there be peace من مگم که امن باشه I say too let us make a mutual compact ما باید یک معاهده برسیم یک قرار کنیم با هم the chiefs of the Hazaras being free with the chiefs of the Afghans and their Amir they also being free یعنی هر دو طرف آزادانه باین با هم بشینن یک تعهد کنن که ما دیگه ای کارا نمیخوایی let us agree each of us to force our subjects to keep the peace هر کس امیر و میر منطقه خود نفریه خود زیر کنترل داشته باشه and if either side had cause for complaint اگر کدام شکایت بال شد let the injured side appeal to the chiefs of the country at fault او باید باید و او کسی که تقصیر شسته در زو پیش امیر زو حاضر شنه شکایت خود درج کنه for compensation and restitution of stolen property اگر مال شد دیگه دور باید پس بیده. Yes, that is simple enough. خیلی ساده گفتی. Here comes my uncle. Arrange it with him. کاکای محمد میال شما میر صاحب محمد شما طورا بگین. اینالی میرو وزیر روی بروی میشنه. Leaving the two men to discuss the affairs of the nation. كنا على قوم رشمو يساب شجور كن شمو بيشن ما هو رفت. It would have been difficult to find two men more unlike than were these two cousins. یادو بچ کاکا امی قدر زمین و آسمان با هم فرق داشتن. ولی محمد the chief Mir Hazara was a typical Hazara. Short, bullet-headed, and pig-headed, but with a certain shrewdness, Akhlaqi, and an eye to his own interests, which made him very difficult to deal with. Ghulam Hussain was made in an altogether different mold. Qalibi Ghulam Hussain, Atigul Begum, Wazir Sahib. Namsh Ghulam Hussain. يقدر الطورة مقصد تقول بيقوم عليه غلام حسين. He was a complete different قالب. إيدنا مخرع. The Wali Muhammad ki mirasta. Gul Begum had not been far when she said he was not Hazara. Gul Begum قلت لنا أتيته وخازريت معلوم نمشي. Tall, bland, erect, drust, active, intelligent. There was nothing but his massive frame, powerful hands, and certain but much modified flatness about the face to remind one of a Hazara. And yet he was a patriot. A man with deep-rooted devotion. خیلی علاقه و چی بگم دیگه devotion با قد مردم هو یک وابستگی دلبستگی to the people of his forefathers مردمی پدریش and the land that had given him birth و زمینی که دو پیداش دو بده دو زندگی مکرد قدازی خیلی عشق علاقه داشت غلام حسین وزیر صاحب. The discussion was a long one. Ali Miru Wazir kishishta khayla de drast tora guftarina, but seemed to terminate satisfactorily to both parties. Ardush balstan mutmain raftan diga. Drast but Ghulam Hussain called to Gul Begum to give them some more tea. Bacha kam bachai digam ber. And while she poured it out, he told her that they had agreed to call a meeting of the chiefs of the whole of their nation. Archki miroya tamam shir bekhay. Assembly, General Assembly. And suggest then an envoy baz ek safir muqarrar kardani hastem ki amray khburdaniya bearing presents of sheep, mal, butter, rogo ya makan, and cheese, paneer, and some of their finest hand-woven cloth. Distari shuda libas ha should be sent to Kabul to the AMIR to express the willingness of the chiefs of the Hazaras to order their subjects to cease from petty warfares and raids now carried on between them and the Afghan Maliks, and to beg the Amir to order a similar truce on the part of his subjects. Kini muini karar banni, dike jang koi, دیگه از این کارا دیگه نه هر کس باید کنترل کنه مردم را این را متهم جمعی این پیغام را میدیم قد توافها رأییم کابل این تصمیم امیر و وزیر سید That will be all right, the wazir's daughter said. He's a just man. अरे वो आदमी इंसाफगार है. Though severe, लेकिन खैर सख्त हस्ता. He will listen to what is reasonable and right. अगर काबिल कबूल बाशा ज़रूर कबूल ना हो रहा. He will not listen. Her father said shortly. ना मना गोश मा फहमा खबर. There will be war. A cruel, devastating war. جنگ باید که تو یک چیز دامان نخواهد ماند دخترم. Yes, a cruel, devastating war, the chief said. ولی محمدم زنجو مگاره خیلی جنگی خطرناکم دنی دو پیش رویه. A cruel, devastating war, but we shall win. مگر بورت از مویه. Win as we have always won before. از پیش برده عالم مبرد. Let them try. بلکی باید. And they will see us triumph over them, slaying thousands as our forefathers slew. همیتی که اجداد ما کده همیتی ما هزاران روی بریتو یک خوبیه. We shall not triumph, the wazir said again. نمو بریم ما بای میدیم. وزیر باز منجی اختلاف نه. We shall not slay. مو کسا کشتنی نیم. Whichever way we act, our freedom is over. بس خلاص شد. But we can at least die like men. مرد وری خب بمر نه. Why do you say that, father? Our country has remained unconquered for hundreds of years. Why should it be conquered now? هیچ وقت فتح نشده منطقه از ما چطور این دفعه تو مگه کی بای میدیم ما. Times are changed. Customs, manners, weapons, warfare is changed everywhere but with us. دنیا کجا رسیده مو هیچ چیز مو اونمو بلاو که داره امضا بتا. The Afghans have allied themselves with the Kafirs. Kafirin کستا متحد شده. The white governors of Hindustan. گورا انگریز. گورا انگریز چی مطلب؟ گورای هندوستان یا انگریز. These Kafirs have given them weapons, given them cannon, given them money. 1/3 of our nation will be bought over. یک سیم شیره برنامه داره که بخرن. 1/3 will be killed. دو سیم شی بخشر کندنیه کشتنیه. And the remainder will be fugitives or slaves. یا فراری مشان یا غلام. I see it all. من میبینم داره ده چیم خو. ده چیم سر خو میبینم داره. I will face it. Face it to the end. I will not pay tribute. خراج ددنی نیم. No, nor I, the chief joined in. ما خود خراج ما کی گفتم که خراج بدی. But we will not be overthrown. مو بای نمیدیم. تو مطمئن باش. We will not be defeated. The Afghans have allied themselves with the Kafirs. So be it. قد از اونا متحد شده خیره. Let their alliance prove their curse. بلکه می یک عذاب یک نوسیت برای زنا باشه. We will proclaim a jihad. ما اعلان جهاد بنیم. A holy war. We will fight for the one true God and his prophet and for Ali against these Kafirs and the allies of Kafirs. And you will see how we'll flock to our standard. Overthrown? Of course we shall not be overthrown. We shall triumph and take tribute from them. مو بسمزنا خراج ميري. تبلتو? The chief's white teeth gleamed and his deep-set eyes twinkled with cunning and anticipation of good things to come. His cousin's teeth were clenched. His jaw set, his mind was made up, but there was neither triumph, na fatah, nor hope, na umid in his face. Nothing but fixed purpose and fixed resolution. برنامج غير جور كده ولا حسين فقط مثل که ما چیز کار کردنیم. Gulbegum, facing the two men, read the thoughts of each, and a sense of unrest took possession of her heart. Her uncle's sense of security was no satisfaction to her. Arch ki Mir sahib gard mizad daro, magar Gulbegum mutmain nabad. With her father's set face before her, she knew which was the mastermind. ومیرم سلم کد وزیرم سلم کد بود مفهمید که کی برنامه داره اینچ. عزیزان من نوزگو of the Bakul, نوزگونی پنیر, wherever you may be. This is the end of our chapter 3, The Gathering Clouds. And this was the story in the time of Abdurrahman facing the unconquered independent Hazara lands, and the story is set in the house of the Mir or the Vizier, where the Mir Wali Muhammad, the chief of the Hazaras, and the Vizier Ghulam Hussain, Gulbegum's father, had their conversation. But the clouds awradaro chumna diga inale. بعد از اینکه نال چیکار شده نیا، یه مورد chapter 4 خبر میشیم. Next. بالای بور.